Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Global Office Hours. I'm Alex Tassetti. I'm a software engineer here at VTEX, and I'm going to be your host today again. In case you're surprised to see me so soon, just a quick reminder that we're now running these every couple of weeks instead of every month. So from now on, you see us here every 2 weeks. So let's get started with our agenda. As usual, we start with the announcements. And today I'm going to invite Juliana to do the first and only announcement of the day. Welcome, Juliana.
Hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen here real quick to present to you this amazing news for our marketplace users. So basically, VTEX's architecture already allowed to external marketplaces to integrate themselves into VTEX's stores. So VTEX sellers could sell and offer their products in these external marketplaces. And this guide that you're seeing here already told you how to do that, but we had a tweak in this process that allows for much easier order integration. So if you scroll down to the order integration section of this article, you'll see that we have two new endpoints available to allow for orders to be integrated and order status to be updated. And you can see these two endpoints fully documented here in our API reference. And if you want to learn more on how to use those endpoints, you can just go to our integration guide and see how to plug these new APIs into your existing integration. And in case you haven't integrated your external marketplace with VTEX yet, we fully recommend that you do so in this new process. But in case you used our previous method, the documentation for that previous method is still on air. It's just not fully shown here on our left navigation because we don't want to incentivize people to use that anymore. But you can still access those docs if you wish to see how the previous method works. And that's it. Back to you, Alex.
Okay, cool. So before you go, just wanted to clarify. So when you mean external marketplace, are you talking about like Amazon, eBay, and kind of having selling through those places items from your store, right?
Yeah, we call external marketplaces basically any marketplace that is not using VTEX's architecture to become a marketplace. And we have different categories of those external marketplaces. They can be our native solutions, which are these mainstream marketplaces like Amazon and Mercado Libre for Latin America. They're already fully integrated with us. They don't have to change any of their integration process. But other smaller marketplaces that wish to become a solution for VTEX sellers and to integrate themselves to VTEX can use this documentation if they wish to do so.
All right, sweet. Thank you for the clarification, and thank you for your announcement today, Juliana.
Bye-bye.
All right, see you later. Let's get going. So next up, before we go, if you want to see all the changes that have happened in the last couple of weeks, make sure to check out our changelog. And then this change and all the other changes will be there. Right, moving on to the Ask the Community section. So this is where we go through questions in our community website, and we give more context to them. So we get someone to explain their answer or give more context or dive deeper into the answer here. So first up, I'm going to invite Pedro to join us. Welcome, Pedro.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me. So, this question is by Patrick Andrade, and he wants to know how can one know the expiration time of the session of a user. So, he asks specifically for the duration of a session inside the VTEX IO store, and he he mentions the VTEX RC session LDV7, this complicated cookie name. And as I said to Patrick, You can find cookies information in the Vtex Trust Hub. So we have a Trust Hub. That's a specific portal for all things privacy and security related, because we are committed to your peace of mind, to our clients' peace of mind. And here, there are all sorts of information, and there's a specific section on privacy and agreements. And if we click here, um, you can find on the left menu here, VTEX platform cookies information. And well, we don't need to go into all the details here, but scrolling down, you can find this VTEX platform cookie list. And here we have more detailed information about some of the cookies. And the first we have, the first cookies mentioned here are these two. And the expiration time for the cookie Patrick mentioned uh, in this in his question is right here. So this session cookie has an expiration time of 30 minutes. And I guess that's it, Alex.
All right. Well, thank you, Pedro, for your answer, for all the context about cookies. So if anyone wants to know more about any of the cookies we use in the platform, they can head to the Trust Hub.
Yes, that's it. Great.
Perfect. Thank you for your help here, Pedro. And next up, we'll bye-bye. Next up, we'll invite George to join us.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Ready to answer some questions from the community, as always.
Oh, yes.
And in this case, it was a VTEXer who asked. So Yunzi from the APAC team, thanks for your question, Yunzi. Is having having a hard time using the newsletter app, and he sent us a screenshot of a part of our admin that's a little old. It's a little less modern than we should have in other parts of the admin. And he said, well, I have the newsletter app configured according to the documentation, but I can't find the list of opt-ins for this newsletter, right? So, and he sent this screenshot. And the first thing I told him about this screenshot, and let me share my screen real quick here, is that's actually an old part of our admin. It's a prior solution for newsletter opt-in, so it doesn't really work for what he wants. What he should be looking at is the CL entity of master data. So that's where customer data is stored, and I'll show a little bit more in a second. But there's a specific field in the client registration data that is the is newsletter opt-in field. So if that is false, then the user hasn't opted in. And if it's true, then he has opted in. And one thing that's tricky is that if you fill in the form and you're not logged in, that Boolean variable doesn't get toggled. You need to be logged in, and I'll show an example of that. But using master data API, you can fetch the customer entry and see if he or she has opted in. And all it takes is doing this query here where you'd substitute email for the user email. I'll show that. So first off, here's a test account I have with subscribe to our newsletter. So this is the component that he's trying to use. And I'm not signed in, okay? So I haven't logged in. I'm going to use my VTEX email. Please don't spam me with emails, everyone. No, just kidding. But if I sign up here, I can take a look at master data, and this is where the client information is. So you go there, and in your admin, you have master data there, and you get to this screen. It's a little old, but in clientes or clients, you can filter by email, and for instance, find a specific user like mine here. If I click here, you'll see it says receives newsletter. No, right? It's still in Portuguese, unfortunately. But yeah, I can get this same information that is here through the API. So this is the endpoint I was talking about. I have Cosmetics 2, which is my VTEX account, and I have George Rindero here as the email. Of course, authenticating here using AppKey app tokens as usual. And if I get, then I'll get an entry. Since it's a search endpoint, it's an array of entries, but right now I only have one because of the filter. And I can see some of these informations here. One of them is newsletter opt-in? It's still false, right? So just like I saw here, no, I haven't opted in, although I have registered. So I'd have to, sign in. After I have signed in, I would be able to toggle that during my registration. Unfortunately, in this specific test account, our sign-in is broken, but I tested it out in other accounts and it works. So definitely keep an eye out for the user needs to be logged in. And that's, by the way, one of the ways we make sure that the actual user is the one opting in, not a robot or someone using our email inappropriately. But I think we should probably work on this error message. It's not clear about, hey, you need to sign in to sign up for a newsletter, etc. So yeah, that's one of the things. So there's a second question I was going to work on today, so I'll go right ahead. Did you have any questions about what I just said, Alex? Was it clear enough for you?
Yeah, well, I was just curious, but I think I got, if I kind of talk back to you, what I understood is that you have to be logged in as a way for us to, not you, but the user has to be logged in, or the shopper has to be logged in as a way for us to verify that they're themselves, right? So their email belongs to them. But then it's not super clear from the UI there that is the case. So I think there's a valid point to this question.
Yeah, definitely. We need to improve the documentation. And one thing that I didn't mention, but is true, is in my query to the master data endpoint, I filtered by email, right? So I wanted to check if a specific user has opted in or not. Let's say I wanted a list of all users that have opted in. I could, instead of adding the email filter as a query variable, query parameter, I could say, for instance, is newsletter opt-in equals true. Then I'd get an array of all the master data entries for all the users that have opted in. So that's a way you could potentially integrate your own, MailChimp or email marketing provider to actually send a newsletter. We don't really have the newsletter functionality in VTEX. You'd have to integrate it with someone else. So yeah, just some extra color to that answer. Now, let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Fair enough. Let's go, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the second question I have for today is by Rafael from Avanti. He's always making great questions. So thanks, Rafael, for bringing great questions to our community. And he had a question about making a request to a non-VTEX API. So looks like he looked through the documentation, because he does mention, like, hey, I have this error when I'm doing an outbound request, for instance, to HTTP status, just as a test. And let me show my screen again. So he mentions that he had already added the outbound access policy, which is 100% correct. Rafael, you really have to do that. He actually even added an inbound access policy. So those two are kind of ways for you to tell VTEX IO infrastructure that, hey, this is a valid server that you can connect with, and it won't be a security hazard for your app. So great. But even still, he had no valid credential provided for outbound requests. So he's like, what else do I have to do? Isn't the policy enough? I'm doing this. I'm using Axios to make that request, and I'm not being able to do that. And I actually found out he had to add an additional header to his request for that to be able to go successfully. He needed to add the proxy authorization request header with the authentication token from VTEX.io. The reason why that is because in some ways you have to kind of make a secure secure authentication with VTEX.io infrastructure. So it's kind of our infrastructure is acting as a proxy between you and the outbound server, and this has to occur in a secure manner. So I actually, asked internally. That's how I figured that out. It's not in our documentation, unfortunately, but it's a standard header for HTTP, right? It contains credentials to authenticate a user agent to a proxy server. That's what our IO infrastructure is doing when you do an outbound request. So that's why this needs to be there. And happy to say that I actually helped a former coworker who's in another company now, but he had a similar problem. So it looks like yet another gap in our documentation that, thanks to the community, we're going to be able to, cover, and at the very least, the community question is already covering partially.
All right. Well, next up it's myself. So I'm going to go through Mariana's question. So thank you, Mariana, for your question. And she asked, where could she find the documentation for the filter navigator props? And then you can see in here that I answered that the filter navigator is one of the blocks available in the search results app. So the props are documented in the documentation I linked here. So I'm going to open here to show where it is. So if you go down to this section here, the filter navigator v3 block, and you can see all the props that it has, and then they're documented quite thoroughly here. So you should be able to use it just in case you need help using these props and configuring it. I couldn't find an example where we were configuring the filter navigator block, but it would be similar to this one. And then instead of flex layout here, you would have flex navigator, and then you would have the props that are in the documentation here with the values you want. So that's pretty much it. Quite a simple one. So just make sure to check the search results app documentation, and then everything will be in there.
Yeah, it's interesting because there isn't a relationship that's like one-to-one between the front-end apps and the blocks, right? So sometimes you know which block you need. For instance, filter navigator was there, but she was like, okay, I couldn't find vtex.filter navigator, and that's what's tricky. One thing that I found useful when using those is always searching on VTEX apps on GitHub. That's where most of our open source components are. So you can just like look for in that organization, or look in store components, which is our main repository there. Can I find any code saying filter navigator? And usually you'll find it within the context of an app. I don't know, just in case that's useful for some of you who are starting out with Store Framework.
Yes, that's a good advice. All right, so this is it for the Ask the Community section for today. If you would like to have your question featured in here, make sure to add the office hours tag to it, and then we'll take a look and answer it here live. So you get more context, a little bit of a discussion about it, extra information. So you only have to gain from it. So make sure to add the office hours tag to your question. Next up, we have the demo section. Sadly, this week we don't have the demo planned again, but if you would like to give a demo yourself, make sure to go to our form. I think the next slide we have the link to the form, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. So we have a form where you can go and fill in to sign up for a demo. It doesn't have to be a demo, a live demo. Like, you don't have to be here with us. If you want to pre-record a demo, like a video or something, that's good as well. It could be anything related to the VTEX platform, using VTEX.io, using our APIs, or any kind of integrations. So anything would be much appreciated. So if you want to give a demo, make sure to fill the form, and we'll get in touch with you. And that is it for today. Until next time, which should be in a couple of weeks' time. And until then, take care. See you later.